All right. Well, hey, welcome everybody. Happy to have the group together. It's for our September Some Ventures Band of Angels monthly meeting that we host here to look at early stage companies. We've got a great lineup of three companies that are presenting tonight, and we've got folks coming in, calling in from all over the country and all over the world, actually. Thanks to Eitan staying up late for us, and we'll hand things over to him here pretty quick. I normally kick things off by doing a little bit of sort of portfolio news at the front end, but we're going to push that towards the end of the meeting this evening because Eitan's, I think it's about 1 in the morning where he is, and I want to give him the floor as quickly as possible. But before we get started, I just will share that, uh, generally the goal here for this meeting is to get a diverse group of investors together. We got members from multiple different angel groups. Obviously, this all started off as a band of angels meeting, and then our fund, Some Ventures, kind of grew out of that meeting in a way. So we'd love to have that affiliation in place, and we're going to hand things over to Tom. But for those of you, if it's your first time joining, the way this works is that the companies will come in, and the founders will give a 10-minute presentation. Sometimes it'll run a little bit longer than that because we only have three presenting companies tonight. It's going to be okay if it runs a little bit longer than 10 minutes. And then we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. And, just really appreciate when the group is engaged and asks, thoughtful questions of our founders. And then what we'll do is we'll ask the founders to share their contact info in the chat window in case anyone wants to follow up directly with them. And then the Band of Angels members will take a vote at the end of the meeting, and we'll have Osley generally, or in some cases Tom or I will reach out to the presenting companies and make an invitation to the Northern California group for deal screening. So I think that that's kind of a fair summary of the ground rules tonight. Try and keep things friendly and supportive, and look forward to seeing some great presentations. Now I'll take a moment. I'll hand it over to Tom to share the latest with what's going on with the band.
Well, thank you very much. Ashley had a family emergency and asked me to give a September update. Let me start with one of the companies that I've personally invested in, BMI Organ Bank, who invented a system for organ preservation and transportation. 125,000 Americans need kidney transplants each year, but only 25,000 kidney transplant operations are performed. Almost 90% of donated kidneys go unused due to uncertain viability. So BMI Organ Bank provides surgeons with data to evaluate whether to transplant or discard a kidney. They've had some big news in the past week. The National Kidney Foundation just invested $250,000 in BMI. A family office just invested $500,000, and Mid-Atlantic Bio Angels has started due diligence. They have a round, it's open. I'm going to talk about four other companies who presented last night at our monthly dinner, all of whom are still open. That's why they're presenting. The first one was Theta Neurotech, who has developed EEG patches that apply to the skin behind the ears to monitor brain waves that are paired with a mobile app and machine learning algorithms to predict and alert epileptic patients and caregivers up to 2 hours before a seizure. So patients can then take medicine to minimize a seizure and make sure that they are in a safe place. In other words, they're not engaged in activities like driving a car. There's a one-time fee for the patches and a mobile app and a monthly subscription fee. The seed round of $1 million has been subscribed, but they've expanded the round to up to 1.75 million, so the round is still open. Second company, Exum Instruments, has developed a mass spectrometer that can analyze any solid material in minutes to analyze its chemical composition, delivering full periodic table analysis. Exum is initially targeting the battery industry, offering the only tool that can image and quantify lithium, which is valuable for miners, manufacturers, and recyclers. The third company is Cayuga Biotech, which is developing a drug that stops major internal blood hemorrhages within 5 minutes. The blood is based on a polymer that is found in platelets and is part of the natural clotting response. They're raising money to go to a pilot clinical trial, after which they hope to be acquired. The fourth and last company is Estat Actuation, which has been for several years developing brakes that are not incrementally lighter or more compact, but are 10 times more, 10 times less weight, 10 times more compact, and 1,000 times more efficient than conventional braking systems used in robots. So the elimination of weight translates into robotic designs that until now haven't been possible. And because so much weight is gotten rid of, the robots can use much less battery power, saving a lot of energy and also, providing for a longer life before a recharge. If anyone is interested in these companies, I'll post some information about the companies because I know I talk quickly in the chat, and I'll give you my contacts as well as that of our executive director, Asli Gazarin, and we welcome any interest.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. And also, if you want to share the decks, I'll also put them into the folder with the meeting. But your call
Yeah,
on
sure.
that front. If you want to
Absolutely.
if you want to send me the decks via email, make sure during the meeting I drop them into the share folder for everyone too. So
Sounds great.
great,
Thank you very
awesome.
much.
Wonderful. Well, I'm lucky enough to have our team, which has been really working actively with many of the founders that are presenting tonight. So rather than listen to me, Raj, would you like to introduce Eitan, or do you want me to take it away? I'll do it, but you've had more interaction here lately than I have, and I don't want to steal your thunder. You're on mute, I believe.
Okay, now I can give him a 30-second introduction.
Okay. All right. Well, take it
Is
away.
Eitan on? Has he joined?
Eitan is on. He's right there. You're ready to roll.
Eitan
I'm,
is
I'm right here.
Hey,
Eitan
Eitan,
is on.
how are you? It was good to see you the other day. So Eitan is I describe him as a fourth quadrant CEO, and what that means is somebody who is technically astute, business astute, also happens to be a PhD and a lawyer. You cannot get, so he's not only a fourth quadrant a person, but even in the fifth quadrant, he's got tremendous amount of talent. He has invented the ability to build a device that extracts lithium from brine and seawater, very far-reaching implications to the sustainability of the world, especially electrical vehicles. So he's just a superstar. So with that, I think, was that good enough for Garrett?
Well, I think so. We'll hand the floor over to Eitan. You're a good hype man there, Raj. Well, welcome,
Yeah,
Eitan, and we'll make enable screen sharing here for you.
yeah. Garrett, can you let me in on my computer? Thanks.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Thank you very much, Garrett, and the Band of Angels in general. Thank you, Raj, for that lovely introduction. It's currently 1 a.m. So I hope you'll excuse my slightly tired tone. It's not reflective of my enthusiasm for this call. It's just been a long day. But as Raj says, I'm Eitan. I'm recent PhD graduate from Tel Aviv University, also a licensed patent attorney and innovation consultant. I invented some lithium extraction technology. So I'll share my screen. We'll get into it. getting a message that the connection is unstable. Am I being heard correctly?
You're okay.
Yep.
Yeah, everything good?
We can
All
hear
right,
you.
good. Fantastic. All right. So, GreenLi. We extract lithium efficiently, affordably, and greenly. So the first question is, who are we? Um, so you've met me, or you're meeting me right now. I'm the founder, CEO, finishing my PhD in mechanical engineering at Tel Aviv University. I'm an inventor of multiple different things, and I'm a licensed IP attorney. Um, my PhD supervisor is Professor Hadas Maman. She is the head of the School of Environmental Engineering at Tel Aviv University, 100 plus something publications, a fair few patents as well. Um, and she's our chief scientific officer. She's definitely part of the scientific academic side. But then on the commercial side, we have Gal Zohar, who's the former CFO and CEO of IDE Technologies, which is Israel's leading desalination company. As you may well know, Israel is a world leader in desalination. So IDE being the leading desalination company in Israel means it's probably the world leading desalination company as well. We have a number of other engineers on the academic side who I can actually publicize. My co-inventors, Dr. Manohar Halano and Dr. Manju Rawat, with whom I invented some of the GreenLi technology, and then a number of other engineers who are currently in stealth mode until our kickoff in the coming weeks. Now, this is the current GreenLi team. We're looking to expand a little bit, but let's get into the problem. So, lithium-ion batteries. From our perspective, this is a very vulnerable supply chain. Here on the left, you can see the raw sources of lithium. We can roughly divide these into three. We have salar brine. This is the groundwater underneath the salt flats of the highlands of South America. Spodumene rock. This is the traditional hard rock mining, predominantly in Western Australia. And then a number of other sources. Now, in the supply chain, these raw sources are converted through some pretty crude chemistry into lithium salts, a sort of intermediary material. These refineries are mostly in China. Before then being converted by slightly less crude chemistry into a number of different cathode materials. And this is the magic sauce that actually makes your lithium-ion batteries work. Now, these cathode materials are then assembled into lithium-ion battery cells with a number of other components, the vast majority of which go towards electric vehicles. Now, as you well know, the demand for electric vehicles has already skyrocketed and is set to quadruple over the next 10 years. So this is a critical industry, and this supply chain is vulnerable. And the problems that produce that vulnerability are problems that GreenLi technology can solve. So, first off, I said the technology is the current technology is crude, and it really is. The extraction efficiency for the lithium in salar brine is in many cases below 30%, but broadly between 25 and 50%. Now, with GreenLi technology, we can extract much more than 80%, significantly increasing the capacity for the same raw material input. Now, the salar brine is mostly in South America, and the rock is mostly in Australia, but the refineries are mostly in China. And this produces some pretty serious geographic bottlenecks that obviously produce very high transport costs, but also slightly more insidiously produce geopolitical vulnerabilities that could destroy the entire industry if, I don't know, some kind of tariff situation or a large-scale war were to kick off. This is a serious problem. But with GreenLi technology, we do everything on site. So that means a vertical integration of the entire lithium-ion battery supply chain, from raw material to the actual battery cell itself. Now, talking about the actual cells, that magic material, the cathode that makes the lithium-ion battery work, there's a very high cost of manufacture. But with GreenLi technology, we can significantly reduce this. Now, the quality of these cathode particles is very, very hard to control. It's a nanoparticle problem. Now, my first master's was in nanotechnology and polymer science. And so our solution to this problem was to actually pre-make the nanoparticles before we even introduce the lithium. And that gives us for the sensitive quality requirements that currently plague the industry, we have an inherent quality control. Now, these aren't the only problems that face the lithium-ion battery industry. Those other sources, be that clay or geothermal brine or oil field brine or lithium refinery wastewater, all the number of different non-conventional aqueous lithium sources have very low concentrations, typically considered not commercially feasible. But with our very effective extraction technology, we can unlock the commercial feasibility of even the lowest concentration lithium sources, even as low as seawater. Now, for the traditional hard rock, so this is conventionally in China, but there's also very significant manufacturing happening in Australia. There is, even in the gold standard, a pretty significant loss capacity. Lithium that gets lost into a waste product that gets just pumped out to sea. Now, with our technology, we can capture that lithium. We can close the loop, a little bit of circular economics, which is a absolute pet passion of us in the environmental engineering world. But lastly, and really most importantly, commercially at least, is salar brine, the stuff in South America, has very high extraction costs. The chemistry is very crude and it's very expensive and it takes a long time and it's high amounts of OPEX and high amounts of CapEx. But with GreenLi technology, we can reduce that OPEX by about half, which could completely revolutionize the industry. So that's the problem with a bit of a solution. How are we actually doing this? Now, the GreenLi vision is to take aqueous lithium sources, a number of which are available, and apply 3 different technologies to vertically integrate the entire lithium-ion battery supply chain. So those sources, in order of descending commercial importance over the short term, is salar brine. That's that groundwater underneath the salt flats in the highlands of South America. These are existing facilities in Chile and in Argentina. The wastewater from lithium refineries, so there are 3 in Australia and about a dozen in China. That's that lost capacity that we can recover lithium from. Then geothermal brine, slightly a non-conventional source, between 100 and 500 parts per million of lithium. This is mostly being done in the EU. And then there's a number of other waste materials, but included as well is just common groundwater has, in many cases, as high as 50 parts per million lithium concentration, not considered commercially feasible currently, but with GreenLi technology, that commercial feasibility can be unlocked. And lastly, and this is the final stage for GreenLi technology, seawater. At just 170 parts per billion, the concentration of lithium in seawater is ridiculously low. But the vast majority of lithium on the planet Earth is dissolved in the seawater. So if we can have a commercially feasible means of extraction, one, we can leverage existing desalination infrastructure in order to actually produce this. But more importantly, it's basically an unlimited resource. Now, those are the sources of lithium. How do we get it out? Well, we have 3 technologies. The first technology is a membrane, basically a filter, not dissimilar from a spiral wound reverse osmosis membrane. It's a proprietary membrane that I developed about a year and a half ago. And it has an extremely high lithium selectivity. That means you pump some water in, and what comes out is just lithium chloride. Now, what's great about the membrane technology is that it can replace the expensive purification of conventional salar brine, and it can scale. This is the fun bit. It can scale using existing desalination infrastructure. We don't need to reinvent the wheel for how we build a massively scaled industrial version of this technology. The desalination industry already exists. We just need to plug our membrane into it. And this is what we're doing with pilot studies over the coming months. And ultimately, we can take that same idea of using existing desalination infrastructure and use the existing desalination business model, i.e., selling treatment as a service to mines. We would charge them for how many cubic meters of lithium-enriched permeate we produce. Now, that membrane is at a very high technology readiness level. We are already talking to factories in Japan around our trial manufacture, but that's not our only technology. We have two more as well, slightly lower technology readiness levels, but with a much, much, much more ambitious market share in the future. So our second technology is a proprietary solid material that captures the lithium from the water, essentially removing it from its dissolved form into an adsorbed form. But this technology works in tandem with our third technology, which is a proprietary electrochemical process to transfer that captured adsorbed lithium onto very special nanoparticles that are the precursors to the cathodes that we can produce. And it's in this way that we can significantly reduce the costs of cathode manufacture and have that inherent quality control that means that we're not losing efficiency in the way that conventional technology does. So our vision is to use these three technologies together. We start with our first one, we produce lithium-enriched permeate, we capture lithium with that solid material, and then we transfer it to our precursor cathode materials. But there are different technology readiness levels. Throughout the rest of the presentation, I'm going to use a color code here. So blue means our initial use case, which is membrane extraction for lithium mines, and the pink means the full suite technology, cathode manufacture, on-site, vertical integration of the entire lithium-ion battery supply chain. So, membrane extraction, that initial use case. Now, let's talk about Salar brine. South America, you have 4 or 5 big companies who constitute about 50% of all of the lithium that's mined in the world, and it's all coming from this groundwater underneath these salt flats, this salar brine. The way it works is you pump out the brine, you solar evaporate it. That means you pump it into pools and you leave it for about 18 months to reduce down in volume through evaporation and to precipitate out a lot of the sodium. Now, the sodium's not the only problem. There's also magnesium and calcium and potassium and all sorts of other stuff. And so a number of very expensive purification cycles are done in order to produce a lithium chloride solution. Now, that final product can then be precipitated, producing a lithium salt, typically lithium carbonate. Now, this is a very expensive process and has invited significant investment in what's in a field called direct lithium extraction, basically a number of different technologies trying to solve this problem. Now, our membrane counts as a direct lithium extraction technology. It's very non-conventional in ways I'll soon explain, but we take this existing operation and we skip it. We skip that long 18-month bottleneck and we skip that really expensive purification cycle, producing that lithium chloride permeate that can be directly precipitated to produce the product. Now, our membrane, if you know anything about desalination, you know you don't just produce your clean water, you also produce a byproduct, concentrate, a reject. All that salt's got to go somewhere, right? If we're removing all of this sodium, all this potassium and calcium, it's got to go somewhere. And that produces a delithiated brine, which allows for what's called reinjection. And this is how we initially got into this, because the environmental problems of the entire operation here have serious risks to the ecosystem and to the surrounding ecosystems. And reinjection of a delithiated brine into the aquifer is the solution to many of these problems. It also, aside from protecting the ecosystem, massively increases the capacity and allows for a kind of eco-fracking, which we can talk about later. Now, in case you wondered what this looks like in practice, this is a skid. This is a containerized unit. It's a completely standardized unit in the desalination industry. These white tubes here are pressure vessels that membranes.
I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm no longer seeing your screen. Is anyone else having that issue? Or is that just a Garrett issue?
Oh, really?
I'm seeing it.
I can see it.
I see it, Garrett.
It's a Garrett issue.
Oh, great. Well, the host just interrupted the pitch. Great. All right. Well, please continue.
No worries. Or it's telling me that I'm screen sharing, so I'm gonna. All right.
Yeah, you're fine, I think.
Okay.
We're good.
So this skid here in the bottom right corner, this is basically what this solution looks like. And this is what's so exciting about this technology. This is already standardized. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. This stuff already exists. All we need to do is produce a new membrane, plug it into existing technology, and apply it to salar brine instead of seawater. And it's just a transposition of the existing desalination infrastructure over to salar brine extraction. This is what makes this so interesting. So it's a fully modular system. That means that we can scale it quickly. We can also ramp up in a really continuous manner, and it's very competitively priced. So we don't have this whole battle around developing economies of scale. That's already been done. This industry is already quite mature. Now, we do have competition. I mentioned that this is direct lithium extraction, right? There are other people doing this, and it's a dense field. There's 70 companies roughly playing in the DLE world, but they're playing a different game entirely. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So traditionally, the way direct lithium extraction was accomplished was with a process called inorganic adsorption. Basically, you absorb lithium onto something inorganic, and then you wash it out. And what washes out of that, that's your permeate. And that two-stage batch process has its very inherent efficiency risks, and for that reason has been very difficult to scale. Here are just some of the companies that have made very, very lovely innovations in this since the original technology was invented in the 1980s. Now, there are slightly more advanced versions, notably organic adsorption, what you call in the industry ion exchange. Basically inorganic adsorption, but now it's on polymers, it's on plastics. So the biggest player in this is DuPont, the chemical giant and membrane expert, have produced a lithium selective ion exchange resin, but it's still beholden to that same efficiency problem, that it's a two-stage batch process and that there's always going to be a fundamental efficiency loss. And lastly, we have a number of membrane-assisted technologies. For me, the most interesting one here is Lithios, an MIT spin-out, who have what's called an electrodialysis process. These on Sorry? Okay. On the face of it, these might seem quite similar to our technology, but they don't scale in the same way because they don't utilize existing desalination infrastructure. It's not a membrane in the same way. Ours is just a lithium selective membrane. It's a purely mechanical process with a selective nanoparticle in the membrane that makes the lithium pass through. It's very clever. Now, I'd say there's no competition, but truthfully, there is one. There is one other membrane, only one competing, and it's LG. LG Chem have developed a lithium selective membrane, but we have some information on this membrane. It's not very good at selecting between lithium and sodium. And sodium is the main contaminant in salar brine. So the mines that we've spoken to in South America have already said they're not going to use the LG membrane because it doesn't actually solve the problem that they have. Meanwhile, our membrane has a very high lithium sodium selectivity, the highest that we've seen anywhere in the commercial space, obviously, but also in the academic space as well. Now that's the competition for our first technology, the one that's at a very high level of technology readiness. Now for our other two technologies, there is just no known competition. Nobody is trying to make cathode materials electrochemically. No one's trying to absorb lithium and then transfer it into those cathode materials. It's just too ambitious for most people operating this way. So what does this mean for the actual mines? Now, with membrane extraction, what we're essentially offering mines is a bigger slice of a bigger pie. We can reduce their OpEx very significantly. We can increase their capacity. We can reduce their OpEx by about 39% for every meter cubed of feed they have. Okay. And we can increase their capacity by at least 20%. All right. Not counting the reinjection that they can then massively improve their capacity as well. And what that means for us is that we build essentially a small filtration system on site to extract lithium. In the desalination world, this is called an RO island, a reverse osmosis island. It's a very standardized, scalable system. The only difference here is that we're using a special membrane that we would be manufacturing separately. And this means that for the mines, they have a pretty significantly expanded capacity and much wider profit margins. So these are the pilot studies that we are going to be building in the next few months. Now, let's talk about a case study. Let's actually throw some numbers at this problem. SQM, the Sociedad de Química y Minerales de Chile, is the biggest lithium mine, the biggest lithium brine mine in the world. I think just their one site on the Salar de Atacama constitutes 40% of all lithium salar brine that's actually being extracted. Now, we ran a very detailed cost analysis of what our technology would mean for them, and we can show it right here. Because we'd be reducing their, right here, their material cost by about 90%, among other costs with contractors and freight, depreciation, so on and so forth, things that are associated with that materials cost, we can very, very significantly reduce their OpEx. Now, the way this would be structured would be that GreenLi would set up a project financing in South America, in this case in Chile, a concession, a subsidiary that would then charge a unit cost to the client, in this case SQM, for about somewhere between $10 and $12 per cubic meter of permeate produced. This is actually very much within range for what industrial desalination looks like anyway. And this would be worth somewhere between $100 and $200 million, depending on some of the costs. For SQM, on the other hand, though, this would be an additional profit of nearly $1 billion, which is quite significantly above what they're currently earning.
Eitan, just a heads up, we're going to want to get to questions here pretty quick.
Yeah, I think I've got 2 slides left. But salar brine is not our only source. It's just the commercially most important one for us in the next 2 years. We have a number of other sources. Firstly, lithium refinery wastewater, capturing that lost capacity. Here are some of the companies that are operating in that space. Geothermal and oil field brine. This is potentially a huge industry, both in the US and also in the Gulf, and also the geothermal in the EU. Here are some of those companies that are already operating lithium extraction on those sources. And lastly, the lower concentration groundwaters, particularly in high lithium concentration aquifers. For example, the east coast of Ireland, the west coast of the UK, large areas of Zimbabwe, many medium to low concentration lithium aquifers actually have commercially feasible concentrations of lithium. Here are some of the companies that actually aren't operating yet, but have obtained the rights for reserves in some of those areas. Now, how big is this market? I think everybody is quite keen to know. For salar brine, if we take just 25% of the available market, if we take just 25% of SQM Salar de Atacama plant, it's around $48 million a year. If we take 100%, it's closer to $200 million a year. And if we take all of salar brine in South America, we're between $300 and $400 million per year. For the refinery wastewater, if we take just 25% of SQM's operation in Western Australia, that's $16 million. That's the pilot study we're building in the next couple months. If we take 100%, it's about $64 million. And if we take everything excluding China, it's just north of $100 million. For geothermal and oil field brine, our SOM here is about $11 million, our SAM at 32, and our TAM, very conservatively, excluding China again, just talking about a small amount of oil field brine in the US and in the Gulf, at about $70 million per year. For the medium concentration groundwaters, unfortunately, not enough information is out there, and the information that does exist is extremely proprietary. So this is something we'll be developing some market intelligence of over time. So last slide, timeline. we're raising now $3.3 million through an Israeli VC called Earth and Beyond Ventures, who operate in deep tech with a very similar MO actually to Sun Ventures, and also with Sun Ventures as a as a sort of, should we say, co-lead investor. Um, um, There are also a number of other non-dilutive sources of funding as well, particularly in the US and in Australia. And we're going to be building pilot studies. The first pilot study in the next few months in Western Australia on wastewater. Um, Another one through the X Prize organization, who are offering a desalination prize. Basically, let's make desalination as cheaply as possible. So we'll be building that in the next few months as well. And then we will progress on to building a pilot study on Salar Brine. That's that South American use case, also with SQM we mentioned earlier. A larger one for the X Prize on seawater built in Israel at a desalination facility called Sorek Echad. And then an oil field wastewater pilot study we plan to build in the next 3 years. We are already in discussions with some partners in the UAE. And lastly, a very large, a very large and important seawater extraction facility, also based in Israel. Now, the seawater extraction facility is the full technology. It's all three together, and that's how that's being scaled up. And we're actually beholden here to the X Prize organization, who, funded through the UAE, have a desalination prize, which would be awarded at the end of 2029. At the end of 2028, sorry, the beginning of 2029. First prize for that X Prize is $40 million. Second prize is 20 million, and the third prize is 10 million. They just gave us $18,000 for qualifying, so they definitely have a lot of money to throw at this problem. Now we project some revenue here long before I think we will need to do a second raise, but that's just us being hopeful. Sometime next year, after we've demonstrated the pilot study for the wastewater pilot in Western Australia, we plan to build a larger one, which will be worth somewhere between $11 and $25 million a year. And if we can demonstrate that Salar Brine, this pilot study over here, is operating well, then we will have successfully won the DLE race, and we'll be able to start drawing revenues from a very significant project in South America. But in order to do so, we believe we will definitely need an additional raise in the middle of 2027 for the project financing to establish that large site. I believe that is it. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I ran over a little bit.
No, Eitan, I think you answered probably a lot of the questions that you would have gotten. So
Okay.
we're extending the format tonight because we only have three presenters, and frankly, I like a little bit of the longer form when our founders really know their stuff. And I think we've got a group of great founders tonight. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions from the group, and we're going to try and keep these questions. We're going to have to wrap questions by about in 10 minutes. So feel free to chime in, group. I'm looking around here.
Eitan, I'll jump in. Can you, when I was first introduced to you, I always like a big idea and then pulling that back to the steps right in front of you to get from here to there. So your big idea was seawater containing a substantial majority of the lithium on the planet, and lithium being the key ingredient to battery technologies that have the attributes needed for for electric vehicles. Maybe just comment a bit about how large the end game is, and your eagerness and confidence getting there on the technology side is obviously step by step on the project finance side through partners.
Yeah.
but maybe just paint that end game picture a little bit.
I'll paint the end game picture with a beginning dream. The beginning dream for us and the environmental engineering department at Tel Aviv University was how do we make batteries how do we make batteries from seawater? Um, we have in Israel great desalination facilities. I think we're the only country who exports desalinated water. So this is basically our only natural resource. There's lots of lithium in that seawater, very low concentration, but extremely high volume. So if we have a selective, efficient enough process, we'd be able to make cathodes from that. The end game here is if that technology works, then we would like to transform desalination plants into battery factories where desalinated potable water is just a happy byproduct. Now the commercial question, which is going to be more profitable? Will it be the existing high concentration lithium sources in South America, or will it be the extremely low concentration but ridiculously available seawater? Is a question that we need to answer by building pilot studies that demonstrate it. But what excites me, I think, commercially about this dream is one, the dream is great environmentally and very much aligns with our values as environmental engineers to try and make the world a better place with inventions. But along the development journey to demonstrate commercially feasible cathode manufacture from the lithium in seawater, we produce a number of different products that have shorter term commercial feasibility. The first one, of course, being the lithium selective membrane applied in South America. We don't need to sell desalination companies on becoming lithium ion batteries. We can sell that straight into mines immediately. They're already looking for this solution, and this is the only solution of its kind available.
Now, look, it's there's part of it that's sounds like alchemy to people, I'm sure. Maybe just a comment on the cathode ready material versus the first product coming out of conventional mines, which is basically at least part of the pink and the significance of that. You might comment.
Sure. This can be answered very simply. The value of a lithium atom in a raw material is about 20 times lower than the value of a lithium atom in a battery. Why is this? Well, for chemical reasons. The lithium in the raw material is very difficult to transfer into the battery. And that value difference means that a conventional lithium mine right now, were it to be able to convert all of the lithium that it absorbs into batteries, would be at least 20 times more profitable. But the technology to do this is crude. It's spread over a few different places, and it includes these intermediary products that are expensive to produce. Our technology skips those intermediaries. It goes from dissolved lithium, so in water, almost directly to the actual cathode material, the nanoparticles themselves. Not even the raw material you need to process to make nanoparticles, straight into the nanoparticles. And that vision and that skipping of all of those intermediaries is the product of a nanotechnological perspective. Instead of making big bulk things and breaking them down small, we make little small things and integrate the lithium in a very selective way. I hope that answers your question, Harry.
Okay, and then I think that was useful. Normally when we get a pitch, there is an ask and deal terms.
Yes.
Here, because Sam has been doing a lot of work, Raj and I and Garrett, and their NDAs and other things. I don't want to ask you to go beyond or outside of those norms, but I I think what we can say, and Garrett, you can comment on this, is that we're looking at a single-digit millions valuation, and we're looking at enough money to get runway and capability to do a pilot study that demonstrates the commercial potential here in a way that either lights up project finance, lower cost sources of funding to scale, or shows a path with a partner. And we're sorting all of that out now. And if there's someone on the call interested, I think that we could handle it on the some side.
Yeah, I think I'll add some context at the end of the presentation tonight for those who are interested. But as anyone who's been a part of these meetings for long and seen the way we've structured investments knows, we like to phase in over time, identify some real clear milestones for the founders, and generally try and get in the single digit million valuation range, and make room for co-investment for our LPs and our other partners as well, our other angel investor partners. So be able to share more at the end of the call tonight, and look forward to getting this first tranche of capital in, ideally within the next 30 to 45 days. I think that's what we're targeting. So happy to expand on that.
Derek, can you go on mute?
Right.
Okay, there was a lot of background noise.
Yeah. Did you get what I just said, or was the background noise too much there?
The background noise was pretty bad, Garrett.
Okay.
No,
All right. So all I was saying is
yeah,
that we'll cover this. We'll recap GreenLi at the end. I think we've spent a good amount of time on the opportunity. I think Eitan, generally we have more questions, but you've covered so much. I'll ask you to just stick around just for a few minutes on chat so you can field some direct questions if they come through, and then hope you get some sleep. Thank you for staying up late with us. Really appreciate the time. And next up, I'm actually going to hand it back over to Harry, who introduced Michael. And Michael, thank you so much for making the time for us tonight. And I'm really excited to hear this presentation because it's kind of in a sweet spot for me. So Harry, why don't you make the intro, and I look forward to hearing more.
Okay. So Michael Bauer is the CEO of Transparency Analytics. Transparency Analytics is looking to be a new entrant into the credit rating agency world, which is an oligopoly. People have heard of S&P and Moody's for credit ratings, maybe Fitch. S&P is a $150 billion company. Moody's is an $80-90 billion company. It's a profitable oligopoly led by those two firms. And yet in the background, there are a number of smaller firms that make a living, and there are a couple of mega trends. One is the private debt world is exploding and will continue on that vein. Second is AI and technology is evolving to a point where automation can pose some disruption, and only a new entrant can exploit the potential without disrupting their legacy business. So we're very intrigued with what Michael and his team have come together, and they've got the history and experience and credentials with the SEC. Michael, I will let you lay that out for us, and appreciate you showing up on short notice.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'll introduce myself briefly, and then I'll go ahead and run into a deck. Again, Michael Brower, CEO of Transparency Analytics. Started my career in insurance, AIG, AXA, a couple of others. The last 15 years have been working in credit ratings and credit benchmarks. Half that time with S&P. Everything S&P does, from ratings to indices, pricing Chinese steel in Shanghai, physical oil in London. Then I went over to Morningstar. I was Chief Operating Officer for Morningstar Credit Ratings. After that, I spent 4 years at Egan-Jones, which is the firm that is presently dominant in private credit ratings. And I was their Chief Risk Officer for 4 years over there. So I'll go ahead and pull up the presentation now. You should be able to see my screen. So effectively, what we are building, as Harry mentioned, is something like the S&P of private credit. If you ask a Wall Street analyst what S&P does, they'll say, well, they have a ratings business, an index business, reference pricing business, and they'll run through it. If you ask an S&P executive what S&P does, they'll tell you they are the world leader in financial benchmarks. Everything they do is a benchmark: ratings, indices, pricing, et cetera. So we're building effectively the S&P of private credit. We're looking to become the world leader in private credit benchmarks. And again, as Harry mentioned, private credit is literally just kind of exploding, and those trends are certainly expected to continue. There are reasons why the big three, S&P, Moody's, Fitch, don't really participate much in the private credit space. Probably reasons akin to why they have been approaching us to see if they can invest in our firm, which I don't think we're going there quite at the moment, but possibly that could be an exit down the road. But right now, I think we're taking more the VC route. So I may flip around a little in the interest of time. So private credit we can think of as credit extended oftentimes to mid-sized PE-backed companies, by non-bank financial institutions, the household names that are showing up in the media these days: Apollo, Ares, Golub, companies like that, Blackstone. A lot of companies moving from private equity more and more into private credit, and every year. Literally every year, the public markets represent a smaller percentage of total investable assets, and every year the private markets represent a larger share of total investable assets. So if you go back 10 years, private credit around 300 billion. Currently, Moody's estimates that private credit is around 3 trillion. 2 trillion of that held by insurance companies. That's really important for us because insurance companies are captive, kind of forced buyers of credit ratings. You may know that in the United States, insurance is state regulated, but the states delegate to the NAIC, National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the standards for setting risk-based capital charges. So for private credit, risk-based capital charges are tied explicitly to credit rating levels, which is wonderful for credit rating agencies. So all of that 2 trillion out of the 3 trillion, all of that 2 trillion held by insurance companies, all of that has to be rated. If it's unrated, the capital charge might be around 30%. Obviously, that's completely untenable for an insurance company. On average, if you do take a risk-weighted average of capital charges for insurance companies, they come in somewhere between 7 and 10%, depending on their risk tolerance and kind of the types of notes that they buy. And that 34 trillion in 10 years, that's a BlackRock estimate. And how do you get there is to me really, really fascinating. To date, most of that 3 trillion number is through what we call direct lending. Just companies and funds lending, making loans to these mid-sized PE-backed companies for the most part. But what we're starting to really see with this explosion in private credit is liquidity-driven product expansion. So obviously, I follow Bloomberg very closely, and every time Bloomberg talks about a new private credit trading desk, I take particular note of that. And now that you have more trading and more liquidity in private credit, and you see these things like the Apollo, a lot of fanfare around the new Apollo State Street private credit ETF. things that were unthinkable just a year or two ago. President Trump over the summer signed an executive order to allow private assets in 401ks. That is a wonderful bullish sign for the market, obviously. And there's a little bit of an interplay with tokenized debt issuance. All of this together effectively in BlackRock's estimate, which we do buy into, taking this market in 10 years to north of 30 trillion. So now I'll just maybe back up a second and talk about the team. So I introduced myself. Kristen Costello is our Chief Compliance Officer. She joined us out of the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission's Office of Credit Ratings about 6 months ago. She spent roughly 20 years at the SEC. She was a branch chief in the Office of Credit Ratings. We approached her, explained what we were looking to do, and obviously we wanted a kind of a really good chief compliance officer out of the SEC, and those relationships we believe are very helpful. Philip Galgano is our head of analytics, roughly 20 years in a managing director role at S&P. That's the most senior analytical role. He ran a number of assets, structured finance, complex assets, and he was the head of analytics at Egan-Jones, which I mentioned is the current market leader in private credit ratings. Now, when Philip and I were at Egan-Jones, we did become dismayed at some of the practices there, which have been in the news. They've been in Bloomberg, they've been in the Wall Street Journal. Elizabeth Warren sent them a letter over the summer. And Philip and I, when we were there, actually became federal whistleblowers, SEC whistleblowers. This is all public information. We have a Dodd-Frank whistleblower suit against our former employer. And, over the time, initially we were talking to the SEC daily, then weekly, then monthly. And over time, we started pivoting our discussion with the SEC from their investigation into our former employer and our whistleblower activities to, can we do something better? Can we do private credit the right way? And the reason that S&P and Moody's aren't really in this market is they have what they call analyst-driven ratings, which means 8 to 10 analysts sitting around a table and qualitatively determining ratings. So these analyst-driven ratings are very expensive, and the ratings fees are very expensive. Minimum fee at S&P is around 800,000. That's a bare bones minimum. They're not targeting 800,000. They're really targeting a $2 million fee for Goldman Sachs to rate a CMBS conduit deal. It works very well for JP Morgan. They'll charge, this is a rough estimate, $1.5 million to JP Morgan annually to rate that JP Morgan as an issuer in all of its debt issuances. But on the private credit side, these fees are more like 80,000. So Egan-Jones is really the only one doing it. And the way they do it is they outsource a lot of their analytical labor to the Philippines. And we have decided that there's a better way to do that. We approached the Securities and Exchange Commission roughly a year and a half ago to see if we could create a quantitative rating agency where we do something completely different. Instead of companies sending documents to a rating agency, waiting 2, 3, 4 weeks for feedback, we created a quantitative model, and we shrunk 2 or 3 weeks down to instantaneous. So if you have the cash flow metrics, you can now get indicative ratings feedback in 20 minutes as opposed to 2 to 3 weeks. So we released our quantitative model in June. We now have roughly 25 financial institutions signed up to use our quantitative model. So, for example, Blackstone, BlackRock's private credit division, which is HPS, Golub Capital, which is a $65 billion private credit firm, Aquarian, smaller firm by these standards, 25 billion. But these are just some of the firms that are using our model. A number of life insurance companies, many of them large global life insurance companies, but also some of the smaller insurance companies are using our model as well. And ultimately, the goal is by the time we apply to the SEC for registration, which the SEC has invited us to apply in January of 2026, we aim to have roughly 80 to 100 firms using our model so that we hit the ground running immediately. Our model is a part of their workflow. It's embedded into the way that they work, and they're getting instantaneous feedback to see if they want to move forward with a final rating. So, again, the SEC invited us to apply in January after talking to them for roughly 18 months. Extremely difficult to get a new credit rating agency registration. As Harry mentioned, there's only been one granted in the last 10 years. And most companies, they haven't rejected anyone, but no one really applies because it's so difficult. You have to know the ins and outs of the compliance aspects and the industry, and it's such a small oligopoly that it just no one even goes for the license, frankly. But with our very deep contacts at the SEC, two of us as SEC whistleblowers, and our chief compliance officer coming right out of the SEC after a 20-year career in the Office of Credit Ratings, we feel we are uniquely positioned to get this registration in the first quarter of next year. So I'll zoom out a little bit in the interest of time, and just talk maybe a little bit more about the S&P of private credit. And forgive me for kind of flipping around a little bit, but we're in discussions right now with the CME Group, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, to create the world's first futures contract tied to a private credit index. This is pretty revolutionary. So right now, if you want exposure to private credit, historically, you can engage in direct lending or you can invest in a fund that does direct lending. Now, if you're an insurance company and you want to hedge some of this exposure, you're holding just tons and tons of private credit, you typically would engage in a time-consuming and expensive, what's called a CRT deal, credit risk transfer deal. So, and there are reasons why no one has created a futures contract to date. Most private credit indices, since private credit is illiquid, most of them are priced quarterly. When a private credit index is priced quarterly, it effectively has no market value. So over the last 7, 8 months, we've developed and we've finalized now a methodology, which we brought to the CME Group, a methodology for pricing a private credit index each and every day. They have put us on a path which culminates around April. It's not a quick and easy thing. They need to make sure, and we also, of course, need to make sure that the calculations for this complex, it's a highly complex product, much more complex than a single credit rating. But we need to make perfect sure that the transactions, the calculations, excuse me, are perfectly accurate. So when the CME Group tells their clients to put $50–100 million in a futures contract tied to our index, those calculations really are perfectly accurate. So among the things we do is third-party independent model validation. We're working right now with a division of the London Stock Exchange Group to perform independent third-party model validation on our index. All of this will culminate in what we expect will be the futures contract tied to our private credit index around April. Lastly, in terms of product, what I love about the index is it just kind of kicks off naturally reference pricing. So, as you're valuing a basket of, let's say, 200 illiquid securities each and every day, that is kicking off all of this reference pricing. You're valuing these securities every day so that when a firm looks to either trade a private credit asset in a largely liquid market, or looks to just acquire it for asset management purposes, and they don't have a lot of market data in the private markets. What we're building out is a matching portal so that they can enter the particulars of their debt instrument. So I'm looking to acquire a debt instrument in this particular sector, this credit risk level, this particular duration, and that will match to all the securities that we're valuing each and every day. So if we're valuing 200, maybe, for example, 8 are a direct match to what someone is looking to trade. And then we will, through this portal, offer to sell the pricing, the daily pricing on these 8 reference prices, reference securities, so that these traders and asset managers are not kind of trading in the dark. And so if you think about conceptually the concept of shedding light on an opaque market, there's probably a very compelling reason why Michael Bloomberg is the richest New Yorker at over $100 billion. He has built a career on shedding light on otherwise opaque financial assets. And that's effectively what we're doing in the private market. We're bringing all of this public sector infrastructure to bear in the private markets, shedding light on the private markets, on these obscure assets by providing references and benchmarks, and achieving the margins that the industry is famous for. On the low end, S&P around 55% on their ratings business. The smaller ratings agencies on the high end, 85% margins. We certainly believe with our tech-driven approach, we're kind of closer to the 85% margins. But that's effectively what we're up to. I'll kind of talk a little bit about the funding, and I apologize. I just want to try to keep to the format and the schedule. But I'll talk a little bit about the funding round, and then I'll open it up to some questions. So in October of last year, we raised a little over $3 million. The round was led by Banco Santander's venture arm, which is called Moro Capital. Moro opened it up. So Santander owns presently roughly 20% of the firm. Moro opened it up, and then kind of the next day, a VC firm that Harry is familiar with, Core Innovation Capital, took the rest of the round. So we only ended up with 2 VCs in that particular round. We're in another funding round right now, which we expect will close out probably toward the end of this month. We're raising $4 million. We're just deciding kind of who's going to lead that round. I think our preference is for Moro Capital, Banco Santander, to lead this round as well. There is a little bit of space still left in the round. We're probably getting close to 3 million out of a 4 million round. There's a little bit of flexibility. We could frankly do it with a little less or a little more, but that 4 million is effectively kind of where we're thinking, and that will go toward building out the ratings business beyond starting with corporate credit ratings. We want to use some of that money to also build out during calendar year 2026, build out for asset-backed securities. Private credit is starting to move aggressively from just direct lending also into asset-backed securities as it grows. That will, of course, go into benchmark development, such as indices and reference pricing. And so that's kind of a high-level overview. Apologies that it was a little bit brief and I flipped around a little bit, but happy to answer any questions, certainly.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Michael. Could you touch on I believe in the deck it said the safe round. Is there a post-money valuation cap on the safe set by the lead?
Yeah, we don't have it formalized yet. We expect it to come in somewhere around 20 million.
Okay, well, forgive the interruption. My new family member is deciding to chime in on your pitch here. If you hear some barking, I apologize for that. I wanted to ask about the invitation from the SEC and the approval process and how long that takes, and kind of what the timeline is. You might have covered it. I think I may have missed it along the way, but kind of the upcoming milestones with the SEC and what's the anticipated
Yeah,
timeline.
so yeah, and I apologize that I ran through that quickly because it's actually fairly cumbersome. In the 18 months we've been dealing with the SEC, we've been going through what they call, their words, the iterative process. So that means you submit drafts, you get feedback, you resubmit drafts, get feedback. Our application package is it's probably close to 400 or 500 pages at this point. So it is an extremely cumbersome process. The last thing they want to see from us, which we're working on right now, I mentioned we have roughly 25 financial institutions using our model. They want to see evidence of institutional use of our analytics product. So, we're working with these 25 to expand beyond 25. We want to get up to kind of 80 by the end of the year. But what we also want to do is they're using our model. We want to sell them credit rating reports. We have a handful sold. We want to continue to sell credit rating reports. And then we need from them what's in the industry referred to as a QUIB letter. QUIB stands for Qualified Institutional Buyer. We need a handful of QUIB letters from these institutions saying they're using our analytics, they're using our ratings. So that's kind of the very last piece of this. In total, what will be a 2-year process dealing with the SEC before we apply in January. So just getting this institutional buy-in. Now, once we apply in January, the statute gives the commission 90 days to make a decision. Um, they have communicated to us that they don't expect to need the full 90 days because they have been interacting with us for over 18 months so far, reviewing all of our documents and draft, and they're extremely familiar with us. But so I think they've led us to believe that they'll probably have a decision around mid-February.
Got it. I have another question, but I want to make sure the group, anyone else has a question, feel free to chime in here.
I'll jump in.
Thanks, Kevin. Go ahead.
Sure. Hey, Michael, thanks for the pitch. Very interesting. As far as your index product or kind of that vision, are you sort of thinking like doing for private lending, private credit? Are you thinking of sort of doing what Case-Shiller has done for real estate in that space?
Yeah, so I do have some familiarity with the Case-Shiller S&P index, but I think it's probably a little closer conceptually to what S&P did with the S&P 500 ultimately, with you think of the Vanguard 500 index. So with Trump having signed the executive order over the summer to bring private assets to 401ks. So now you're going to see private assets in 401k mutual funds. And with the advent of increased liquidity, all of this private credit trading, these private credit trading desks that are going on, what our goal is ultimately. So I talked about the CME Group futures contract. That's our kind of go-to-market. That's our first product. But the real goal, the real, I think, gold mine here is to try to do what S&P did with the 500, with the Vanguard 500 index. And there's an opportunity to co-design with fund managers, literally pioneer passive investing for private credit. So since private credit historically is so illiquid, you can't do that. You don't have the trading opportunities to get in and out. But now that it's becoming more and more liquid, now that you're going to have it in 401ks, the real opportunity here is pioneering index-based passive investing for the private markets. So we just started approaching We have a functioning credit, even though we're not registered, we have a functioning credit rating agency right now. The credit rating agency, frankly, is further ahead than our index product. We have an index methodology, but we don't have the calculation engine fully built. That's going to take through the end of this year. So roughly, I'll say by the end of this year, we'll have the calculation engine completed. Once we have that calculation engine completed, we intend to work closely with fund managers who are looking to pioneer private assets in 401ks and bring index-based passive investing to the 401k universe.
And so will your ratings inform pricing then? Because I didn't hear that you were necessarily getting into the pricing aspect of it.
We are getting into the pricing aspect, but not through the rating side. It's an offshoot of the index business. So if you think about valuing largely illiquid securities every day, what you're doing is you're becoming a price maker. So a typical index business is a price taker. So the S&P 500 is an example. They take prices. They go into the New York Stock Exchange and they take those prices and they throw it into it's called SPICE, S&P Index Calculation Engine. They throw it into SPICE and SPICE calculates an index. So they're price takers taking an exchange price. So what we're doing, because private credit is still just now starting to become liquid, but still the majority of the assets are still illiquid. What we're doing is we're acting as both price maker and price taker. So we've worked with experts. We now have experts in our firm at valuing illiquid securities. The accounting standard for valuing illiquid securities is ASC 820, FASB ASC 820. So effectively, what we're doing is we're using these accounting standards to value illiquid securities each and every day for the index. And we're a price maker and we're also a price taker. We're taking those prices that we make and feeding them into the index. But as we're making these prices to calculate the index, we're also selling those prices to traders and asset managers, or I should say we will be in the first quarter of next year.
And then where do you see it going for an exit? I mean, I know it's a little bit out there.
Yeah, so it was a little unexpected this time around to have two out of the big three ratings agencies approach us for investment. The reason, frankly, that we didn't go with them is twofold. Number one is we want to build this into a multi-billion-dollar business before exiting, and I think it's kind of counterproductive. But the other reason is they're awfully slow in making decisions. So, for example, so I don't think this is terribly confident. S&P, for example, I just was talking to them earlier this week, and they want to evaluate us for an investment opportunity in January. So we're doing around now, not in January, but also I don't even think, but they approached us. And there's another one of the big three that also approached us. And so we're talking with them. We're building those relationships now for a potential exit, I'll say years down the road. There's another firm. Again, we don't have anything confidential with them, but a firm called Dun and Bradstreet, very very well known firm, D&B. But this is another example of a potential exit, right? I mean, they aspire to have a credit rating agency. They see the private credit opportunity, they see the fintech version of private credit, and they're interested in it. And same thing, like I think they would love to get in. They're also awfully slow in making decisions. I think we don't want them in at the moment, but I've been talking with them because, I just want to have these kind of relationships teed up, have the brand awareness, I think, in the industry is helpful. Ultimately we would go, I'll say once we're a multi-billion-dollar company, a couple of years down the road, I think we would probably select one of these types of firms, either a rating agency or a global data analytics provider that aspires to have a rating agency. So but that's long-term thinking.
We have time for one more question before we move on to our final presenter, and then we can take questions via chat, Michael, if you want to stick around too.
Of course, yeah.
Just I'll hop in. I didn't hear much about like revenue, right? And by that I mean, look, it sounds like you have companies utilizing some of your analytics today. And it sounds like you have contracts for others, funds and banks to utilize the platform at, post SEC approval. But I didn't hear much about the revenue value of those contracts, post SEC approval, or like what the analytics may be generating
Yeah,
from a
so
revenue.
right now we're effectively giving away the analytics to Blackstone, BlackRock, all of others because we want them embedding it in their operation. So we're effectively pre-revenue now. We want as many firms just kind of using our analytics, getting comfortable with it, so that when we in the first quarter when we pull the trigger with the approval, we can charge. So the deal economics look like this. So when you sell a private credit rating, let's take a 6-year note as kind of a standard private credit note. So here's a really good example because you see this a lot in private credit. Let's say I'll use this as an example. Golub, large private credit company, structures a private debt issuance with a healthcare company that's operating PE-backed healthcare company. PE firm buys a dental practice or a physical therapy practice. They're operating in maybe 2 cities and they want to expand to 25 different states. So they take on a debt issuance and they do that. And Golub wants to market that debt issuance to insurance companies so they get a rating. So Golub approaches a rating agency and the rating agency will book let's say $180,000 for that credit rating. Now, 80,000 is up front. 80,000 is year one. So the new rating fee, 80,000, and then there's a surveillance fee. So you could think of it a little bit like an insurance annuity type model. So every time you surveil the rating, you charge a surveillance fee. But the upfront first year rating is 80,000, and then each of the next 5 years you would charge roughly 20,000. So you would book 180,000, and that's how you would collect it: 80, 20, 20, 20, 20 over 6 years.
Got it. On that one, oh, go ahead, Frank.
So just one more question. Do the contracts have any commitments related to like minimum level of like ratings that you expect some of the funds or banks to take down? I mean, what do the contracts mean from a revenue commitment standpoint?
They do not have commitments. No. So the rating can be canceled by either party anytime for any reason. But I would say in close to 100% of the cases, the rating is maintained for the life of the debt issuance. So, a 6-year note in private credit that rating will have to be maintained for the insurance company to continue to take the risk-based capital charge that's tied to that rating. So, it's almost 100% viable, but I think the answer to your question, nevertheless, is there's no kind of requirement to maintain it.
Got it.
Okay.
Hey, great questions, Michael. Really learned a lot. Interesting presentation. Please share your contact info and stick around for a few if you don't mind, in case there's some additional questions that come in. And really look forward to following up with you. And thanks, Harry, for making this connection.
Thank you for having me.
Next up, I get to thank Sonia Markova, formerly from the Band of Angels, now from the Cane Angel Network, who I is not a recent mom. So the fact that she's even calling in right now is thank you so much, Sonia, for making the reconnection. I believe Vic, we had connected at some point in the past, and as I was looking through, it's been a bit of a chaotic year. So I'm happy that we finally have you here to present this evening. Vic is an exited founder who's looks like he's leveraging some technology that we had previously worked with to build a company to a sensor company that's going to help detect falls from the elderly, and I'm happy to have you here tonight and learn more, as well as I know that's not all the sensors do, but you can dive in here to Rahm Sensor development, and looking forward to learning more here. So why don't you take it away, Vic?
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. I guess we met about a year ago. I think I told you about my son who's 15 years old and 6'5", and he's trying to get into the Air Force Academy.
That's
so that's how. Yeah. So anyway, there's a backstory on that. When he was 6 months old, He had some respiratory issues, and I was working with Bank of America as an application manager. And then previous to that, I did 10 years of geospatial industry where I was doing remote sensing applications. And because he had a respiratory issue, I figured out that there's a way that I could get his vitals without touching him during the night, so that in the morning at least I know how he was breathing and things like that. So that's where my journey started with an entrepreneur. So what I did is I came up with this technology from University of Florida, where you could get vitals of a person with no touch. It's not a wearable; you just keep it a few feet away from you, and you get able to get heart rate and respiration. Went a couple of years into that, and then some veterinarians came up and asked me, "Can you do it for animal monitoring?" And I'm not a pet owner, but figured out that the product market fit for them is that they wanted to get vitals post surgery. So I used the same technology we came up to get vitals of animals. Kind of turned out to be a good option for us because we did good in that. We made up 2 million ARR, and then we sold the company for $18 million. One of the things what we did is we split the licenses in two parts. We did it in human, I absorbed and gave the animal license away. So with that, let me share my deck. Let me know if you can see it. So we did sell the company, and I started Rahm Sensor about 2 years ago. What I did is I started building a team in place, and how do we get this technology out of the human space? I'm surrounded with people who have had previous exits in the human applications in the medical field. So with that said and done, we started looking into where the applications could be there. We did a ICOP national program, figured out there's two applications which non-contact vital sign monitoring would really work. One is in the incarceration care, and the other one being elderly care as well. We're not working on them simultaneously. Being a startup, we're doing it sequentially. We felt that the incarceration was the first model we could go after, because you must have heard this adage that you're innocent until proven guilty. Any day that about 600,000 people in jail, and so what happens is you're in jail until the judge decides to send you to prison or you post bail. And the number one reason when you come into jail, people don't know who you are, what have you done before entering jail. Nearly 10-15% of them have some kind of medical issues, really from suicidal thoughts to all the way to self-harm. So if something happens to them in jails, then it turns out that the counties have to pay a lot of money to the family or to themselves on this issue. Now, when it comes to elderly care, one of the biggest issues out here is fall. The fall detection is now getting prevalent more in that to help seniors take care of themselves in this case. And our application has two methods. One, it does that it can identify vital signs within a minute or so when something happens to a person. And also it can aim to reduce the falls in this case as well. So what's the technology about? So when we were working on the veterinarian side, we built a tank at this point because we really wanted to make sure that what would the veterinarian want to see when they want to look at the animal. So in this case, what happened, we started with vital signs, heart rate and respiration. We added a thermal camera to get temperature monitoring. We added a gyroscope to make sure that the device was set correctly so that there's no issue on mobility and things like that. The other thing is they wanted a power battery pack so that if there's continuous monitoring can be done if there's no power at the place. And also the data can be stored for more than 72 hours. So all this one is packed into a punch, and it's now being used in the jail sector and to do non-contact vital sign monitoring. And one of the most important things we've upgraded the device is to do advanced AI prediction. That is, with the ability to put a halo module in it, we're able to do detection of any kind of self-harm before it happens. So you can think of a product in two ways. One is more predictive methodology. If somebody tries to commit suicide or something like that, it alerts the correctional officer to go take action. And the other case is that if the vitals start dropping, there's another reaction to take place to go see what's going on. So we have a unified product line. The first one is called Cell Guardian, and the other one is Silver Guardian. With the application out there, the biggest competitive moat we have is that it's one technology and we can unleash it two ways. I gave you an example that I had a couple of years working with Bank America. I worked on technology where there's some experiences that you can actually work in multiple fields using the same tech. So, example, when you do bank loans, you can get a car loan or you can give a real estate loan. It's the same technology use. So that's the same principle of use in this case, that we can deploy it in multiple layers by using same technology, but using same issues. So you'll notice that the TAM, SAM, and SOM is out there, but let me tell you more in actual figures, as in people in incarcerations, that any day 2 million people in jails and prisons, any day 600,000 of them are in jails, and nearly 10% of have some kind of medical intervention which needs to be taken care of. So when you say medical intervention, these people have to be monitored every 15 minutes by corrections officers to take a look at and see how they're doing. Now imagine you have a device like ours, you put it in the jail cell, you can look at them 24 hours 7, and we have the way to do event management, that we have a timestamp to understand what happened, and if anything has happened, the correction officer can be alerted to go and take a look at them. In comes to elderly care, there are about 7 million people greater than the age of 75 who have some kind of dementia issues. Nearly 3 million of them stay in nursing homes. The other 3.5 million stay in their home itself. So it's a difficult situation because when you are in the case when you have dementia, to be monitored 24 hours 7 is actually being a prisoner of your own mind. And how do you take care of yourself using a product in this case is to into an intervention and to take a look at how they're doing. So like I said, we started the company 2 years ago. For 18 months, we raised $1 million. And what we've been focusing on purely is the regulatory pathway. I'll be honest, this is the first time we had to get through this process. To understand this process and get everything in place was at this point, at this end of July, we did get a FDA Class 1 on the jail product. We're getting our FDA Class 1 on the elderly care product, the Silver Guardian, which means that at this point in time, we can start sales. As of month of September, we have started to sign POs. And Kevin on my team was on the call will take questions about how we started to move ahead and make these convert our traction into sales. When it comes to competition out there, I think it's split in both ways, that there's either video monitoring done in jails or there's vital sign non-contact monitoring getting done. So our product is unique because we can do everything in one device. So we can do the video monitoring as well as the non-contact the same device, as well as layering with the AI computer vision to detect and see what is happening on the person being monitored. So we come up with a slew of patents out here. We have about 13 patents. We continue to add more patents as we continue to grow. We have 11 of them from University of Florida. We have our own patents. Plus, we have patents. We're working with Texas Tech. The only reason why we're working with Texas Tech is the inventor went from University of Florida to Texas Tech. And we started to add more patents, joint patents with Texas Tech at this point in time. Growth strategy for the last year or so, Kevin has been going to conferences, a lot of jail conferences, to understand the product, let them know what the product does. A lot of traction has been garnered from there. We've added 2 distributors at this point in time, one in the south of the region, another one in the northwest. And we're trying to add a third one in the next couple of months. The way we set the prices is 2 ways. Jails can either buy it as a unit product or unit sale, or you can buy it on a SaaS model or a HaaS model in this case. When it comes to the hardware sales, it goes from anywhere from $2,800 to $3,500. After 12 months, we give them $600 on a SaaS fee to maintain or upgrade the software for the product line. Or the other way around, we do $119 a month for 4 years, goes from a lease to buy scenario. We're starting to expand now, getting some orders from Ireland and Scotland, and Kevin can talk about it after we take the Q&A session. So the goal is that we can deploy in 2 applications as of this month onwards. We're getting ready for the initial launch. We got about 3 or 4 conversions of the jail orders into actual sales, and will continue to grow at this point of time. The key advantage of this is that our COGS are at 1,200 at this point in time, will reduce to 700 by 2028, and will continue to expand by year 3 to be cash positive. So the raise at this point in time, the last raise for $1 million, we did a 30% discount. This raise is for a 15 million pre-value with 20% discount, but with the 25% discount if we are able to close by October, end of October, or if we get our first million in. And what we want to make sure is that we're giving preference for our earlier investors, but now opening up to other investors around the country. What are we going to do with this $2 million? Converting all attraction we have into sales. The next goal for this quarter, coming up from Q4 onwards, is nearly converting 400,000 worth of POs, what we have, into actual sales. We said we have the FDA Class 1. We submitted our devices for safety testing for FDA Class 2. That is for getting the vital signs to be cleared by FDA. There's a predicate device already out there, so it's easier for us to get a 510(k) on it. And the next 9 months or 12 months is again to just focus on sales on these 2 applications. One of the things people ask is, like, again, being an early startup, how do you manage both? Is, like I said, the technology remains the same, but I have 2 different marketing teams, 2 different sales teams who are taking on this applications and taking it out there, making sales. So in summary, why Rahm and why now? Because I've done it before. We've done it in the veterinary industry. We have the same technology, which we're now upgraded to use it for human health requirements. The same leadership team which we did for the previous exit is still in place, and we have strong patent protection. There may be other devices doing what we can do, but what we have is pretty unique, and we continue to add patents on this area. Ready to take questions and anything on the test.
Yeah, I'll lead in with a question. With your customers that are currently in the pipeline, based on all of the things that you monitor, what is the sort of deepest need that you've seen? Is it the fall detection? Is it what is the piece that's getting them in the door first?
Kevin, you want to take that because you're always talking to customers?
Yeah, thank you very much. From what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, they're keen on the vital signs, the respiratory distress and things like that. This product is primarily used for intake cells. So if somebody were to be brought into a county jail tonight, they put them in an intake cell. They have no idea what kind of health history they have, so they need to monitor, that individual for drug ingestion, whatever the case may be. Also, suicide risk is high because people are, they're in a bad state, so they're concerned about suicide risk.
Understood. Can you tell me a little bit more about the sales cycle and so from the moment that they're discovering Rahm and how long it's taking to sort of work them through the pipeline, start to finish?
It's taken us about, it was taking us about 9 months. We've shortened that quite a bit. We're down to about 3.5 months now from the time I actually meet with the people, do a demo, to the time they make the decision. The HAS model has helped a lot at 119 because it allows them to kind of take it out of their operating budget as opposed to a capital budget. And so for $119 a month per device, a lot of times they'll go ahead and bite that bullet early on. It's a 48-month program, and at the end of the 48 months, they own it outright. We expect LA County had such inhumane jail conditions. They were actually, the suit was brought by their own attorney general in California last week. And so, as you can imagine, the bureaucracy with LA County, I mean, I've been on probably 8 or 9 conference calls with sometimes 15 and 18 people on the call, everything from the IT people to the doctors, to the nurses, to the lawyers and things like that. It's a big bureaucracy as a large city would be. But this lawsuit has really sped things up a lot. And they had their second to last meeting yesterday, and we passed out with flying colors. So we do expect the LA County quote to go through at the next meeting, and that's $125,000 to start. and that does not include the annual software support fees. And that for the 35 devices, that would be about $100,000 a year in additional income.
And sorry, I want to open up for other questions, but just one more here. Vic, did I understand you correctly in you saying that you have two sort of sales teams working in parallel internally, one on the software and one on the hardware side? Can you explain a little bit about
No,
why?
I meant that I have two sales teams in two different applications. That
Okay,
is
the
one
elder
for the
care in the prison.
elderly
Okay,
care
I
and the one
understand. Okay.
for the jail side.
All right, I understand now. My mistake. Great. Other questions from the group? Got a shy group tonight. Come on.
Well, let me just throw this in as well. The incarceration environment is totally underserved, and there are a lot of people there that truly need to be monitored. If somebody were to threaten suicide, they usually go on a 15-minute cell check, and that means somebody has to look in the window every 15 minutes to make sure they're okay. But a death in custody is traumatic, not only, of course, for the individual and the family, but also for the staff at the jail or the prison, and of course for the other inmates. Harris County, which is Houston, Texas, had 34 deaths in custody in the last year, so roughly 3 a month, and it's become an epidemic down there where these individuals are dying generally either through drug ingestion or suicide. So if we can cut down the deaths in custody, that's one of the biggest pools that these jails and prisons are looking at, because we not only do we record the data, we watch the individual 24/7, but we also save that data. So if they get a call from the attorney, say 2 months from now, and says, my client Kevin O'Connor had a heart attack in your facility and you didn't do anything about it, well, we can actually download that data. Now they can download a PDF immediately if an event takes place, but we also save that data for them for 6 months, and they like that a lot too, because that gives them one extra level of security in terms of inmate safety and deaths in custody.
Yeah. All right. Following up on that, you're mentioning tapping into the operating budget. Are there any sort of RFPs out there that are available, that sort of larger dollar contracts that you can go out and compete for and win to get sort of a one-to-many type approach within the prison system? I'm not familiar about how with how the contracts work on that side, but I would imagine that once you have a couple of proof points, that this is something that would kind of scale in a larger way.
Yeah, I've got a $300,000 quote out to the Department of Corrections for state of Nevada. I've got a $300,000 quote out to the Irish Prison Service. So we've got some large ones, and one of the strategies though that we took early on is every county has a sheriff, and so large and small counties all have a jail. That's the county jail. So the police department, that's where they drop people off, is at the county jail. We actually are going after the jails first because it's an easier and it's a shorter. You were asking about, time to close and things like that. The federal budget is we're talking years before they make decisions on that. So we've actually had better success going after the counties, large and small, because and oftentimes less people that have to make that decision. We'll get to the prisons, we're approaching the prisons. We go to the conferences where the prisons are in place, like American Correctional Association that was just here in Denver, but we generally go after the jails first because we found that was the shortest pathway to revenue.
Understood. All right. Well,
One of the things I just want to add in, when it comes to exits, I know the government's cycles are a little slow, but Axon is a really big company out there which does their body cam cameras. It's a $50 billion market cap out there. There was previously the Taser company, which is now doing all your 80% of all police wear the body cameras. We're talking to them on a quarterly basis. So in the future, it could be a good exit, because that's one thing where nobody is working on at this point of time. And we want to target jails at this point as the first exit.
Yeah.
And when we talk about a death in custody, it's $1 million lawsuit generally to start.
Yeah. So the initial $1 million that came into the company, who were the investors that participated in that?
There was all the old investors from the previous company who put their money back into the new company.
Okay, so mostly angel investors then.
All angel investors. Yeah.
All angel investors. Got it. Harry, did you have a question?
No, I was just agreeing about going after the jails. It's the entry point in the decision-making process. That makes sense to me.
I was just going to jump in on with no permission, just to basically say that last sentence you said is the most powerful sentence of your pitch, that all your investors reinvested. I mean, you don't see that very often. So congrats on that.
I mean, we raised 2 million in the last round, and when the last company we sold for 18, so many of them made their money back.
Good.
I mean, all of them made the money back. So
well, and they still reinvested in you, so that's really good.
And they continue to invest again. So that's the other point, the next round too. So.
Well, Victor, despite the fact that we've got a bit of a quiet group, I can assure you I'll be following up with you after this call, and look forward to making also connection to our healthcare portion of our Band of Angels group, and I really appreciate you and Kevin taking the time. I'd ask if you please just drop your contact info in the chat as well, just in case there are any quiet investors on the call, which frequently happens. I often get text messages from folks who don't want to chime in and ask questions, and please share, and we'll look forward to following up with you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to pitch today, Gary.
Thank you for making the time for us very much. All right. We'll give them a moment here. I think we went with the 3-company format tonight. I think one lesson learned, and this is a repeated lesson, is that we probably still need to be a little bit stricter on the front end on the time there. We went a little bit long, and so I appreciate everyone sticking with us and sticking around. But all right. What we're going to do now is once we see Vic, you got your contact, Kevin. If you presented this evening now, I'm going to ask that you guys sign off so we can have a little dialogue, and then we'll follow up here afterwards. So Vic, Kevin, thank you so much. I think our other presenters signed off already. So you guys have a wonderful evening. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is everyone still with us? Cal, what did you think, Cal? Why don't you lead things off here? Appreciate you. Yeah.
Well, I missed the opening comments of company number 1, so you might want to have somebody else kind of lead us through that. But I really liked the middle company. I'm eager to hear what other people thought of that, because they just seem to be in an ideal position.
No, I sent Harry a text message during the presentation saying they were checking a lot of boxes in my mind. Frank, what did you think? You're on mute, Frank.
Sorry. Yeah, I like the private debt, like analytics, like ratings company, quite a bit actually. I just think that's a market poised to explode, and I think they're really in like their focus is like right on to where the market's going.
The only question they didn't answer was the one that Kevin posed, I think. He kind of asked about what's the exit, and I didn't hear a firm answer on that. He talked a little bit about who might be
I think so.
I mean, they're a pre-revenue company. Like asking them about an exit is kind of like, who the hell knows?
Well, he did say in a couple of years when we're worth a few $1 billion. So I think the exit is implicit in that.
I would like to have heard his personal goal.
Yeah.
Harry,
I spent quite a bit of time with Michael, what's that?
Go ahead, Harry.
No, I spent quite a bit of time with Michael. I think he's definitely given thought to the landscape and who would be a good ultimate buyer, which is why he's not letting the strategics into the current round. And when I met him, introduced by one of the original co-investors on his first round, I saw what people are saying here, right? That it's in a category that has a lot of secular growth. It's in an oligopoly that has high margins, and it has a lot of comfortable legacy players that if there is a new segment, which is private debt, and you can get the blessing from the SEC, and that's my biggest focus and concern. It's a little binary. They do have to get admitted into the club. It looks like they're in a great position to do that, but particularly in this world, nothing related to the government is guaranteed until it actually happens.
I didn't clearly understand what they need to have to be like Standard and Poor's. Harry, do you understand that piece? I mean, could they operate without it?
I know there's an acronym like there usually is, and it's a license sort of certification and blessing from the SEC to basically be an index provider or rater. And I think there are 10 firms that have that approval over the last 30 years, 40 years. S&P, Moody's, and to a lesser degree, Fitch are the big ones. And then there are a number of smaller ones.
I believe it's an N or SRO.
So at a minimum, there's this typical, right, a national.
Yeah. I don't know what it stands for, but I know that they're just a handful. Yeah.
Rating organization with assets.
So I didn't understand, is it binary that they either get the approval or they don't? Let's say
presumably if the analytics work, if the analytics are good, someone will pay them for the analytics, regardless of whether they can be a ratings agency or not. Obviously, like there's more power, like in autonomy and probably like market protection, being like the only ratings agency rating private credit, right? Right. But if the analytics are good, somebody will pay them for them.
Yeah, I think it's the difference, Cal, between being a monster outcome and a little more of a successful cottage industry.
The downside outcome is still a good exit. That makes it more interesting to me. I think that's what he was saying.
I'd say it's an okay exit.
I think
it's a big deal to get the.
The only thing that's not clear is the system replicable? If it is, then all these 30 agencies, what's preventing them to replicate it?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I think the big guys would disrupt their business, so they've got the classic incumbent problem of disrupting their own business, and it is a pretty comfortable oligopoly. I mean, and the response rates, engagement rates, it's like people see it, but their ability to respond to a changing environment or a growing market, from what I've seen from the little bit of checking I've done on this is. It's pretty slow.
I want to hear from Sally. I'm so happy. Thank you for joining us, Sally.
And then the regulatory barrier.
Harry, we're going to hand the floor over to Sally for a second. And I'd love to hear what you think about what you saw tonight, Sally.
On this particular group, there's a couple of questions that I have. Is that they're pre-revenue, and it all comes down to how accurate, how good are they at what they do, and how long is it going to take for them to prove that they're good at what they do. Was listening to a piece the other day about hedge funds are, panting to be able to go into 401ks. And they may be, oh, is this really great? But are the 401ks going to be interested in having something that is as risky as that in a space where most people are looking, this is going to be, they're going to retire and this is what they want. They're going to have to retire. And, how much risk are they going to be willing to make? How much are the big managers going to be willing to do that? But anyway, it all depends upon, for me, if they can prove that they are accurate and that they are transparent, and how long is that going to take, and what does that do?
All right. Thanks for the feedback and thanks for joining. Everyone, I actually have to call it a little bit earlier tonight because I have to be on a Zoom in 3 minutes with who's soon to be our largest LP, it looks like in our next fund, and I'm going to share some news around our upcoming fund in our meeting next month, and I look forward to doing that along with sharing some additional positive portfolio updates. I'll close with sharing that Automotus. I spoke with Jordan just a little bit before this call, and the past couple months of traction on that one, they hit 270,000 in revenue in August and 330,000 in revenue so far this month in September. So that one seems to really be turning the corner, and hopefully everyone received our quarterly update. I think we've got some real meaningful traction happening, and I'm just working hard to travel and get a handful of anchor commitments squared away so that I can then share the sort of the next steps for some ventures. But no matter where we land from a fundraising standpoint, everyone's going to have the opportunity to participate. And even if you don't participate, we're going to still keep running this meeting and really look forward to having everyone join and sharing deal flow and working with all of you. So that's it for me for tonight, and I gotta go hustle after.
Good luck with your meeting, Garrett.
Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. Yeah, well, it's a late night over here. You have a great night, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks.